Chris Lee and Blayne Gilmer, Southeastern 14, here to talk a little football. We're getting our preseason previews ready. Today we get to the Arkansas Razorbacks, who had a little bit of a disappointing year a year ago. I would say more disappointment based on injuries. I don't think that I really point the finger at Sam Pittman or the players. Just sometimes you have one of those years where you lose some key guys. That's what happened to Arkansas. But, Blayne, this is a team that's got some firepower in the backfield on offense. It's well coached, and it's got a lot of dudes that hit the portal really, really hard. And I think a team primed for an interesting year.
No doubt. Sam Pittman, he tried to tell people in these booster club meetings after the 9-4 year when he was going around and he was meeting with donors and stuff. He said, now listen, now it's hard to win 9 games every year in the SEC West. The secret to life, I had someone tell me one time, is managing expectations. And I think Sam Pittman was trying to do that last year a little bit. Now, trust me, they were trying to win every game, but I think he knew it was going to be a little bit different team last year. And I think this year's Arkansas team is poised to bounce back nicely from a year ago. And I think that you'll see with the experience they have brought back that was already there, and then some of the experience that they've brought in via the portal, like you said, I think you've got a very interesting dynamic and a very exciting roster to talk about here with the Arkansas Razorbacks in 2023.
Well, let's look at the progress the last few years from Chad Morris to Sam Pittman. I'll have you pull up the graphic when you get the chance here, Blayne. But, of course, Morris left that program for dead. Pittman came in, and really in that 2020 season, which was the COVID year where they went 3-7, but were so much more competitive, were more interesting on offense. Still wasn't a great year statistically, as you can see. And just some explanation for some of the graphics. AP and coach are the two polls. And then computer, COMP, that's the computer composite that we keep. You can see that rapid improvement from Morris to Pittman. And even last year with the 7-6 record, it was still a top 30 team according to the computers. Scored pretty well. Dropped off certainly from 21 to 22, but we could kind of explain that. I mean, if you want to pick a bone with Sam Pittman's teams, you might like to see a little more discipline. The penalty numbers there, though, are out of line with the rest of the league. But this is a program that has just rapidly improved as Sam Pittman has put his mark on this team playing and now enters year 4 in Fayetteville.
And look at that margin there in 2022. I mean, close ball games. Ball games with a lot of this. So you've got Arkansas that now one thing when you face a Sam Pittman team, Chris, is you better pack a lunch because it's going to be a blue-collar, physical mentality that's coming to you or you're going into. And what a atmosphere that has been created as well in DWR there. Because do you remember a couple of years ago that Texas game at Arkansas? That was one of the best atmospheres I've seen in a stadium, the excitement, everything that's going on there. So I think that people are going to be excited about this Arkansas team. I think that largely that's going to be because of the running game they have and the experience they have at quarterback in KJ Jefferson. I know we'll get into all the specifics of it, but then there's some exciting guys they've brought in on defense as well. But you have to be impressed with Sam Pittman taking this team from what was quite honestly one of the worst teams in the entirety of college football under Chad Morris, in fact, an embarrassment, and then brought them back to consistent respectability and even a threat to teams like Alabama. They had Alabama on the ropes 2 years ago in Tuscaloosa, and now they returned to Tuscaloosa this year. So it's going to be interesting to see some of these dynamics play out, Chris.
Yeah, one last thing on the graphic, don't pull it back up, but the strength of schedule number 30 last year overall nationally, I have an issue with it. The computers, I thought, shortchanged their strength of schedule a year ago.
It was tough.
It is what it says it was according to the computers, but I just wanted to note that. I thought they played a tougher slate than the number 30 nationally. And going to play a pretty tough one this year. We go into that in a separate video. We've done schedule previews for all the teams, but I want to talk about that offense, Blayne, because you have done a series of quarterback previews, and this team is led by a guy who is experienced and talented. He's a threat to throw it. He's a threat to run it. he's going to be one of the best players in the league this year. And of course, his name is KJ Jefferson.
He's consistently, you see some games where he's completing 70% of his passes, but he's consistently for his career been around between, that 65 to 68 pass completion percentage number. So in terms of completing passes and getting things going, he's been efficient. But now KJ Jefferson, what he's really looking to do personally, he's looking to make himself more marketable as a quarterback to the NFL next year, right? To make these teams. What does he have to do? Well, he has to tighten up just a little bit. People confuse completion percentage sometime with ball placement, and with not having some of the bigger receivers like he's going to have, like he had last year with Matt Landers and Jaden Hazelwood. Now he's got some guys that are a little bit quicker. There is a big body guy in Tyron Broden who's I believe 6'7" that came from Bowling Green, so he's got a big catch radius. But can he put the ball in positions in this Dan Enos RPO style offense where they can do what Alabama's team had done for so many years in the same type of system? Oddly enough, Dan Enos was there coaching Tua Tagovailoa when he was at Alabama. So he's been around, done some different things since the last time he was at Arkansas. But in that system, can you get the ball placement to create runs after the catch? If KJ Jefferson can tighten up a little bit there and really help create some explosive plays after the catch with his ball placement, I think the sky's the limit for this Arkansas offense, especially with a guy who is unbelievable as his, running mate there in Rocket Sanders, one of the best running backs in the entire SEC.
Well, you touched on one of my concerns. It's the receiving core. To me, I'm not convinced that it's what they've had in the past few years. But before we go into that, because my goodness, the running attack will be there, I'm interested to see if things change with Kendall Briles gone and Dan Enos back. Briles 2 years ago ran it 63% of the time. I say ran it. That doesn't necessarily reflect in rushing attempts, but a sack goes in the books as a rushing play, but it's really a passing play. And so we make adjustments in the stats we look at. Last year, they ran it 60% of the time, averaged 5.7 yards last year per running play, 7.3 per passing play, turned it over 1.9% of the time, which is pretty respectable. The year before, they turned it 1.2% of the time, which is elite. So this is a team that's been balanced. It's had ball control. It's held on to the ball. And I'm interested. I just think that if you start doing running back rooms in the league, boy, I don't know who you put ahead of Arkansas at this point, because you got Rocket Sanders, you got Rashad Dubinion, you got AJ Green, who was a talented high school recruit a couple of years ago, who's played some for them. You got Dominic Johnson, who's been around for a while and put up some numbers, although more maybe past than recent. And of course, KJ Jefferson can run it. He can give you 600 or 700 yards on the ground pretty easily himself. This is a very, very dangerous rushing attack. And oh, by the way, they got some really big and experienced dudes up front to block for them too. Names that you know if you follow SEC football.
Absolutely. Bo Limmer, Brady Latham, they seem like they've been around forever now. But they really help make those holes for the guys up front. And Rocket Sanders doesn't need much of a hole. He creates one himself, and he's able to break a lot of tackles. But Sanders, Dubinion, Green, Johnson, you said it. It's probably the best running back group, top to bottom, in the SEC. And I just think that they're going to have a tremendous year this year, and that'll help out if they can shoulder some of the load and KJ Jefferson just pick his spots when they have to run him, because it is the SEC. And I know he's 6 foot, probably 6'4", 245 pounds. He's a big old guy, but still, to take a pounding when you run the football, the less they can have him do that, and the more they can use that big arm of his and scheme guys open. In that RPO system, once those linebackers and guys in the second and third level start to bite up on the run a little bit, slip some guys in behind them, whether it's an Isaac Tesla, or whether it's Andrew Armstrong, or whether it's a Sam Mbake, a guy who is out of the state of Georgia They have a running back coach, Jimmy Smith, who used to be a head coach at Cedar Grove High School out of Ellenwood, Georgia. And you see guys sprinkled in this roster from the Peach State, where Sam Pittman came from after being with Kirby Smart at Georgia. So they're being resourceful in how they pull guys in to this roster. And I think there's some guys that are going to be making plays, through the Bryce Stevens, another receiver, Isaiah Sategna. So they've got some guys that are going to have to step into bigger roles and feature roles. But it's all starts with that running game, Chris, and Rocket Sanders and KJ Jefferson will be able to really do a lot of that damage themselves. But then how can they complement it with the passing game, which is kind of what you alluded to earlier?
You mentioned that receiving core, and it's like that scene in Major League when they're rolling out the opening day rosters and they're saying who are these guys and some things that maybe we can't say to keep our rating here. But if I've got this right, their leading returning receiver in terms of production was Bryce Stevens, 9 catches, 101 yards, and 1 touchdown. Where they went in the portal, Andrew Armstrong from Texas A&M Commerce, he's supposed to be starting, I think, at the X spot. He went 62 for 1,020 and 13 scores a year ago. Tyrone Bolden, who's been at Bowling Green a while, veteran guy, looks more of a steady guy than a player. He went 32 for 506 and 7 a year ago for a Bowling Green team that wasn't that good. You go beyond that, they got Isaac, I guess it's Tesla. I'm not sure of the
I'm going
pronunciation.
with Tesla. I'm going Elon Musk on him and saying Tesla.
I mean, it looks like Tesla, but I feel stupid if I call him Tesla and I get it wrong. So I'm sure Arkansas fans will let us know.
He's from Hudsonville. He's from Hudsonville. I don't think he's going to care if you mispronounce his last name. It'll be okay.
Well, he went to Hillsdale College, which is D2 or D3. It's in Michigan.
Yeah, it's crazy some of the places they're being very resourceful in how they're pulling guys. But I know Isaiah Sategna is a guy that they're excited about in the slot. He was a guy who looked shifty there in the spring and made some plays. So to your point, there's guys that have to step up and prove themselves. It's going to be we've heard teams refer to themselves as the no-name defense. Well, this is going to be the no-name receiving core, which is not something that maybe makes you the most excited going in. But when you are Arkansas and when you have Sam Pittman as your head coach and when you place such a premium on being able to run the football and play physical on the line of scrimmage, then the passing game becomes a byproduct of that. It is a little bit different because they have had a big, true number one go-to guy with like Traylon Burks and really Matt Landers proved to be that guy. Last year they lost Trey Knox, in the portal to South Carolina. So to your point, a lot to replace on the receiving core, but that means a lot of opportunity for new guys to step up. So we'll see how that goes in Fayetteville.
Well, opportunity will be extended to this guy, and this guy will make our all-name team. I think it's Varkey's Gums. He is a transfer from North Texas. This is what he did a year ago. He was a second-team freshman All-American, although he did take played 3 games, got a red shirt the year before. Caught 34 balls for 458 and 5 scores. He's 6'3", 230-ish. So not a huge guy, maybe more of a receiving tight end. So that's maybe one place where they get. And a guy from Hillsdale too, by the way, 68 for 13, 25, and 13 scores. So there was production there. What does that mean at this level? I don't know for those guys, but that is where they went to try to restock the cupboards of receiving targets.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's we've talked a lot about the D2 running back that South Carolina brought in, and from Newberry College, he set all kinds of records. So once you make this step up, we'll see how that translates over. It'll be on Dan Enos and company to, and then of course, like I said, KJ Jefferson has to go from the guy who is, creating things with his legs and a big arm to now being so in control of this Dan Enos offense that he's able to lift the play of those around him. And that is the mark of a experienced and a really good quarterback. And typically the teams that go on to have special years have that kind of guy as a signal caller who can raise the level of play of those around him. And I think KJ Jefferson has that in him, and we'll be able to see it, once we get into that SEC schedule for them, because Arkansas fans, we've done our video on the schedule. The thing that has to jump out is you get a little bit of a reprieve in the non-conference, so you may get to ease into that a little bit, and then once it hits SEC time, time to go and KJ Jefferson and company to show what they're all about.
Well, here's another place where maybe I've got some concern. Now, up the middle, they're probably as good as anybody between Latham and Limmer and Braun, who, although he'll be a first-time starter here, he played a lot at Florida 2 years ago. Didn't play much at all last year after the regime change there. But at tackle, man, they are thin on experience. Now, they're huge. Devin Manuel, 6'9", 310. He was 380 at one point. And at right tackle, I guess it's Patrick Kutas, Kutas, 6'5", 303. They combined last year to play, from my notes, 7 snaps. I don't know that that's a place where you want to be going into the SEC season where your tackles combined for 7 snaps a year ago.
Well, they got Tykeus Crawford there as well that has played,
right?
That has played and can slide in if it doesn't work out with Patrick Kutas there. So we'll see who ends up truly being that right tackle. Amarion Harris was a highly coveted recruit, one of the biggest recruiting wins for Sam Pittman in his tenure there. So he could end up maybe even usurping a Josh Braun before it's all said and done. So they have options there on the offensive line. But you're right, Bo Limmer, Brady Latham, they're gonna anchor that thing, and they're gonna be the leaders. And Sam Pittman, the one thing I'm not worried about Arkansas, as long as Sam Pittman's the head coach, is the offensive line play. I think it'll get right.
Well, just be clear, you know how people take a lot. I'm not saying they're not any good. I'm just saying that's one thing that jumps off the page is there's not going to be a probably team in this league with less experience at tackle. And that does kind of, especially when you're protecting
which used
the
to mean
blind
something.
Side of the franchise, which used to mean something.
But now you look at LSU last year, both of their tackles were freshmen. So who knows? You throw all, it's
now, to be fair, those guys were a little more highly regarded than these two. But
but
everybody has a first. Everybody takes a first snap. Anthony Munoz took a first snap at one point, but just something to watch.
It's like that as good as it gets line. Right. I think of a man, and then I take out all reason and accountability. So you never know what's going to happen over there.
Right. Defensively, boy, they hit the portal hard. They've got, goodness. I'm looking at their defensive line rotation. You got Jeff Coate, who started at Missouri. You got John Morgan, who will be a backup in the end, who played 12 games at Pitt a year ago, played a lot. They've got Tank Booker at the nose tackle position, played 12 games at Maryland, was pretty productive. You go down, they got Kelvy Rose from Louisiana Tech, played a lot of games. He's an older guy. Don't know what that's going to be worth. In between, they got Eric Gregory, who played 13 games at Arkansas last year. Cameron Ball, 13 games at Arkansas. And Jasad Stewart, who played 10 games. All those guys produced. It appears to me on paper, I don't know that they've got like a Reggie White or Howie Long in this bunch, but they do have a lot of guys who played a lot of snaps and produced at this level before. It would appear to me depth-wise, they've got enough dudes in the trenches, which is obviously a very important thing in this league.
Yeah, I don't think the next Aaron Donald is looming in there by any means, but I think they've got a solid group that can rotate. That's big, keeping guys fresh, especially with the way these teams play tempo and all this kind of stuff now. Just being able to have different bodies that fit the same body type, and you don't have a whole lot of drop off. So I think you're okay up there. And to be quite honest, Chris, this is not where Arkansas struggled last year. I mean, they produced a lot of sacks. I mean, they were a team that had a lot of pressure on people and things like that. It wasn't the front that was the problem. It was the back end that was the problem, and they replaced a lot of that through the transfer portal as well. But you mentioned a lot of the front, kind of hybrid in that front. Landon Jackson, he plays that buck position that sometimes it's a defensive end, sometimes it's a stand-up outside backer, and he's a really bright spot for them, as well as Zach Williams. So I think those are two more productive guys that kind of merge into that front before we even get to the linebackers and some of the additions that they made there.
Yeah, I didn't mean to leave that out. That tweener spot, the buck, is they're huge. They're more size like linemen than they are linebackers. At linebacker, they did have some losses there. Chris Paul is back. Jordan Crook, who's been a backup, who's played a good bit, or did a year ago as a true freshman, is back. They brought in Antonio Greer from South Florida, who didn't do much a year ago. 2 years ago, he was second team All-American Conference, had 92 tackles, 3 sacks. They brought in Jaheim Thomas from Cincinnati, who looked like a full-timer for them on the weak side. He'll be depth for them. They do have some guys here, even though they lost Sanders, who was a big-time player for them a year ago. They do have a pretty good group in terms of experience and some new faces who played a lot at other places.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have to replace guys who are just legendary to that program, like Bumper Pool, and then even Drew Sanders came in and he showed his athleticism right off the bat with how he came in and produced. I like the Antonio Greer pickup a lot. I know he's a year removed from that success that he had there at USF, but I'm just telling you, he's a guy when you watch him and you watch how he plays, how he diagnoses plays, how he hits, strikes blockers, sheds blockers, and is able to go pursue and make tackles. I like that pickup a lot for Arkansas there. And listen, Travis Williams, we got to mention a changing coordinator here too, right? Because Barry Odom has moved on elsewhere, and Travis Williams comes in. He's gonna bring in a more aggressive style of defense, because you look at what they did at UCF when he was there under Gus Malzahn. I mean, they were an aggressive defense, flying to the football. I think you're going to see that hasn't necessarily been the calling card of Arkansas's defenses in Sam Pittman's first couple of years. They've been a little bit porous, but I think you're going to see that tightened up a little bit this year, at least a bigger emphasis on creating havoc. And then they've just gotten so much more athletic, I think, on the back end. Of course, we know what Dwight McGlothern can do at corner. You've got Lorando Johnson and Al Walcott that both come in from Baylor, and if they just bring in the presence and the aura of Dave Aranda alone, then that's going to be good for the Arkansas defense, because we know what kind of defensive genius that Dave Aranda is. And then Jaheim Singletary, a guy that transferred in from Georgia, uber talented recruit, was just kind of back behind the chain, so to speak, in the depth chart there. Wasn't going to make his way to the top, for another year or so. So elected to go out and play for Sam Pittman in Arkansas, and he's a guy that I think can step up a lot. So they have some new blood there in the secondary, and I think they've gotten a lot more athletic in doing so.
They got a lot of depth at safety, man. You mentioned Johnson. He was a 12-game starter at Baylor a year ago. A.J. Brathwaite was a 12-game starter at Western Kentucky 2 years ago. Looks like he missed some time with injury a year ago. Hudson Clark, I think, started all the games last year at safety for Arkansas, was very productive. I'm trying to look at the backups.
Malik
Chavis comes back. He played a lot. Yeah, I mean, they got a lot of guys that have played a lot of time at safety, whether it's at Arkansas or other places. And this is one thing we touched on a lot last year. I think it's worth bringing up again this year too, if people missed it. I think that pass defense, I'm not going to say it's good, because when the ball was in the air against them, they were in trouble a lot of times. But the thing that people miss is the ball didn't always get in the air because they got a lot of sacks. Now, Sanders is gone. That's going to hurt them. But when the dust was settled on pass plays, they only gave up 7.3 yards. I mean, I say only. That's not good, but you've seen worse per throw, 7.3 yards. Now, their run defense wasn't quite as good as it was on paper because the sacks came out of that. When you adjust for that, they gave up 5.5 yards a carry. They're going to really need to get better in both places. But I think, especially if you look at, just how the pieces fit together, the experience and having more bodies up front, I would think they would get better this year, probably in both regards, Blayne.
Oh, no doubt. Like I said, just coming over from a program that is so defensive oriented, and they've had the teachings of a Dave Aranda with guys like Lorando Johnson and Al Walcott coming over. I think they're going to bring a lot of. There's intangibles that go into playing defense as well, Chris. Things you can't just say, oh, height, weight, all that kind of stuff, but knowing, okay, here's what my responsibility is. Here's how I fit in the greater scheme, and being able to communicate those little nuances and things like that to some younger players and things like that. But really, as you pointed out, there's not a whole lot of youth to point stuff out to. You're just trying to raise the level of some guys who are your direct peers. If you're Lorando Johnson and Al Walcott, because a lot of these guys that you listed out, they've been around college football for 4 or 5 years now. So it's going to be, as we talked in our Tennessee preview, they have a very old defense in terms of years of experience in college football. Well, same thing can be said for this Arkansas defense as well. You see so many seniors and redshirt seniors as you look across the depth chart here. So if there is one thing that Travis Williams should be able to do, he shouldn't have to worry about having to throw too much at these guys or say, hell, well, we can't do this, this, and this because we need to keep it simple. It should be a thing where, okay, these guys have been around, they know what college football is like, and he should be able to put the full complement of what he wants to do in. And if what holds true from what he did at Central Florida to Arkansas, that's going to be, he's going to have a very, very vast blitz package, and he's going to be aggressive and encourage guys to play man coverage and kind of getting guys jerseys and just be competitive and make plays.
Yeah, let's wrap up some loose ends here. I'll give you mine, then I'll give you a minute to think on yours. One thing I think Arkansas needs to do a little better is force some turnovers. Last year, they did it on 1.9% of the snaps. The year before, 1.8% of the snaps. That's not the worst around. You'd like to see that number closer to 2.5%, though. Now, the good thing is offensively, they've held on to the ball. 1.9% of plays they turned it over on last year, 1.2% the year before. That's elite. And so, same guys around handling the ball at quarterback and running back. Unless they develop fumble problems with their receiver group, you like the trend they set there. The other thing, special teams, we don't spend a lot of time talking about that, but Cam Little is back again. He's been there a while. He's on track to break the field goal percentage record at Arkansas. And then Max Fletcher, their punter a year ago, is also back too. So they've got returning guys at punter and kicker.
Yeah, I think what you can do, if you have any concern with your defense, I'm not saying grind the clock or anything like that, but there is a difference between playing with playing a no huddle type system and things like that, and using too much tempo at times. I think Kendall Briles was a little bit guilty of that at times. I think they can slow things down a little bit and lean on the running game, but as well as I do, Chris, that people are going to load the box on Rocket Sanders, and especially with this wide receiving core, it's incumbent upon Dan Enos to design some plays early in games that are going to take advantage of defensive coordinators loading the box against Rocket Sanders and get some confidence going early for KJ Jefferson and the wide receiving core. If they can do that early, loosen that box a little bit, then get Rocket Sanders, Rashad Dubinion, AJ Green, Dominic Johnson rolling behind Bo Limmer and Brady Latham up front, those kind of guys, I think you have a real recipe for success. And that in turn, being able to eat a little bit of clock, be methodical, make drives last a little bit longer is going to help out whatever deficiency you have on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Arkansas has the personnel to play that way. And I think if they do, you're looking at a team that I think could be third, maybe pushing for second in the SEC West this year, and be right in every ball game they play.
You brought in some interesting stuff with tempo there. I'm looking back. Odom's first year as defensive coordinator, which came under Pittman. Of course, he's gone now. They're on the field for 80 plays a game. Now, that was 2020. That's against an all-SEC schedule. So you don't have a chance to, play Central Arkansas or somebody like that to put in a 45-play game and bring that down. I get that. Next year, they were only on the field for 68 plays a game, though. Big drop off last year, back up to 72. I'm guessing a lot of that had to do with inability to get off the field on third down against the pass a year ago. And then on the other side, with Briles, they went 68 plays in 2020, 69 in 2021 on average. And then last year, they went lightning fast at 74. So last year, Arkansas, in an average game, you had 146 snaps. I'll be interested. Of course, you have the rule changes too, which is going to knock down the number of plays, but I'll be interested to see how that plays out in Fayetteville this year too.
I think if they could get that down to the mid to low 60s, Sam Pittman and company would be much happier with that in terms of the offensive plays run, because I just think the tempo has to change a little bit and you can still give the illusion that you're going fast, but with the RPO style system, give KJ Jefferson some time to survey what's going on with that defense, where I'm going to go with the football, and be able to do things that are a little bit more complicated for the defense, but more simple for Arkansas to do, and still have options to take advantage of stuff post snap, because you do have that experience. KJ Jefferson has seen just about every defense that it can be thrown at him. So I think those are advantages for Arkansas, and they need to lean into those going into this 2023 season.
We're going to be leaning into all 14 SEC teams. We've previewed a couple at this point. The rest are to come. We've previewed everybody's schedule. We'll do predictions on every team. We will hit other stuff as it comes up. We're doing player ratings. I mean, you name it. We're doing this in the middle of June when we still got baseball going on. So we're talking about the College World Series. We got basketball when basketball stuff develops. So we are your home for SEC football, baseball, and basketball coverage. Best way to catch our stuff, hit that subscribe button. If you hit the like button too, that also helps our analytics and helps us get found. For Blayne Gilmer, I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14. We'll see you again soon with more SEC sports content.